Hello, good morning and welcome to the program. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. We woke up this week to the shocking news that personnel of the Nigerian Army in company of the police and other security operatives had invaded and laid siege to the offices of a popular newspaper, especially in northern Nigeria, by the name Daily Trust. The siege took place at the paper's headquarters in Abuja, its regional office in Borno, and of course its Lagos Bureau office. Now, the security operators reportedly forced the gates open. They seized some computers, arresting 2 reporters, including the bureau chief in Borno State. According to a statement released by the military, they indeed visited the office of the publishing company to invite its staff over what they call the lead story published by the Sunday Trust. This story, according to the military, divulged some classified military information and, of course, undermined national security. Now, we're turning our attention to the controversy rocking that particular development. As we speak right now, many stakeholders and indeed the public began to criticize the move of the military, and everyone's talking about it. I'm joined this morning by Femi Aino, who is back, this time not to discuss his interest in Ogun politics, but as an international lawyer and publisher of The Village News. Good morning and thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Mr. Ademola Adegoke is here again, communications consultant. Thank you so much for coming.
Good morning and happy new year to our viewers at home.
Glad to have you around. So, stakeholders, the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, Nigeria Guild of Editors, the presidential candidate of the PDP, the list of stakeholders are endless, who have, largely condemned the invasion of Daily Trust offices. As a matter of fact, they have called it brutal, primitive, unconstitutional, without due process. Some even called it a throwback to the dark days of military rule. What's your opinion about this invasion?
Well, my opinion is very simple. I think the approach is wrong if you look at it. Number one, there's no need to listen. If you need to, what you should have done is just to call the editor of that newspaper and invite him. You may even question him. And if you feel that...
Let me hold you very briefly to fix some things right here. We'll take a short break and we'll return for more details. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. We apologize for the poor audio quality earlier. Mr. I know you were letting us into your opinion.
Yes, look, I think the approach is wrong. If you want the editor, the best thing you need to do, you can either phone him and tell him to come down. And then you interview him and ask him relevant questions. That where did you get this information from? Do you even know about the provisions of the Official Secret Act? But you see, this is not very unusual. Occasionally, there will be a lot of conflict between the freedom of the press and the national interest. And where do you need to strike the balance? Where you need to strike the balance is that the military needs to work with the media and the media needs to work with the military, because the military they are there to defend the territorial integrity of the country.
The media inclusive.
The media inclusive. But the point is this. What normally happens, where I've been and where I come from, is that the military, we work in partnership with the media by having what you call either a memorandum of understanding. This is the way we are going to get information. If you need clarification, you need to contact this person. And also, you will recall, there is something I can't recall the word, either you call it embedment, whereby if there is a war going on, sometimes the military embed journalists with the army or whatever, in which case they can give them uniform, they put them in the armor tank so that they take them to the war front. Despite what is going on in Palestine and the Israelites, you will know that at least we still get some information, because the Israeli army, they give cover to the journalists so that they can go on the front line and report. And what the military in Nigeria has not done, they need to work in partnership with all the media houses that, look, this is the provisions of the Official Secret Act. And most of this information, if it's a classified information, you need to be very careful the way you report. And the issue you mentioned, army to retake Baga, there is no way any reporter will report that without giving out some operational strategies that, look, this is the strategy, we are going to have 1,000 army, this and that. You need to be very careful because this information will filter out to these renegade elements and all of us will be at threat. But my own concern is that I don't support the siege to Daily Trust office, but at the same time, I don't think there's anything wrong calling that editor to come and explain himself.
There is no doubt there's been some cordial relationship between the media and the military that we have monitored in the past years. Would you consider these a one-off experience, bearing in mind that sometime in August last year, a particular Samuel Ogundipe of the Premium Times was arrested by the police? Of course, Ogundipe's arrest was sequel to a story he had written revealing a report by the IGP to the then acting president, Yemi Osinbajo. When he refused to disclose his source of the particular story, he was charged for theft. A couple of years ago also, it was reported that soldiers impounded some newspapers that were being transported to a part of the country. Is this a one-off experience that can be easily excused?
Well, it can't be excused. I mean, to start with, an act of this nature can never be excused under any guise. Whatever is bad has no other way to describe it other than that it's bad. The action of the military is very, very bad. Even if we want to call it an isolated case, we are maybe things that happen, far in between. But then it does not matter when it happens. Whenever it happens, it remains condemnable. So we have to look at it that way. But beyond that, the issues like this also throw up the question of adherence to ethical standard.
We're going to get there in the course of the show, but I just want us to, quickly analyze in depth what precisely happened here, because some have called this, to some extent, a poor appreciation of the advancement in information dissemination. The fact that dissemination of such information, as it is now in 2019, is not restricted to a particular facility. Does the military understand that? That somebody can just, on his phone, type an article and upload it online.
Yeah. The military has to appreciate that fact that it used to be a global village. It has become a global room. It has become a global room such that, whatever you think you are doing elsewhere, or somewhere, anybody can have access to it. And then you see now the frontiers of reportage, so to speak, have been narrowed. Because aside from the conventional media, the electronic and the print, you have, in fact, you have much more of citizen journalism these days. So there is that, participatory manner or structure in journalism now that anybody can report anything. So the military has to appreciate that. And again, you talked about the throwback to the dark days of military rule. I think the military, the Nigerian military is yet to be purged, of its mentality of that era. This, bloody civilian kind of attitude that you just can do anything, in the name of protecting the integrity or national security. I think the military has to purge itself of that mentality.
Now, very quickly, let's talk about what the military calls the breach of the Official Secret Act. Now, enacted in September 1962, this act specifically provides for the protection of sensitive official information. It states, as a matter of fact, that anyone charged with an offense under the foregoing subsection shall, unless the contrary is proved, be deemed to have acted for a purpose prejudicial to the security of Nigeria. Now, on the other hand, there is what we call the Freedom of Information Act, passed into law in 2011. That provides for free access of public information to the citizen. We seem to...
No.
It appears there's a controversy here. Which is
superior
superior between the two?
No, I know where you are going. The superior one is the Constitution. That guarantees the freedom of the press. And if you look at Section 22, Section 39, this gives them the right to hold government into account. But there is something which you are missing. And that point is that this is not an absolute right. It is a qualified right. The state can ask you that, look, you cannot report this. And don't forget, there is no state or no country without state secret, let's put it that way. And we cannot allow the media just to go into, because they have the freedom of the press, then what you need to do, you can just report anything you like. There are some sensitive information which must not go in the public domain. And I take your point that there's a freedom of information act. The essence of the Freedom of Information Act is to bring to life Section 39 of the Constitution by holding government into account. And if you look at that act, even where I've been and where I come from, and in Nigeria, there is an exemption whereby if you go to a ministry and you ask them that, look, can you tell me the number of people who have done X, Y, Z? They can tell you that, look, we are relying on the exemption under the act because we are not going to give...
For the sake of national security.
Because for the sake of national security, we are not going to give you that information. And the point is this happened all over the world. The state must be able to keep certain information which are sensitive, secret. That doesn't go in the public domain. And in any event, what is going on, I agree with you, and I take my brother's point, that the world is moving fast. You cannot remain still. But we are talking about responsible journalism here. That responsible journalism has a thin line.
Do you consider the article in question as regards the military's operation in Baga as one that we consider as a national security?
If you read the article, I think it crossed the line a little bit. Even if you look at the headline, military plan to retake Baga, there is no way you can report that without telling the public how they're going to retake Baga. You see, let's not even go far. Look at it. Let's try to be very objective here. If at the end of the day you are going to report that I'm going to take over TVC, definitely there's no way you are going to make that report without talking about the strategy which I intend to apply, without talking about how I'm going to raise money and what have you. You see, if you are in a privileged position, you will have access to privileged information. The way you manage that information is very important. Let us forget what the military are telling us. They've told us time without number that Shekarau has been killed over a number of times. Sometimes they will tell you there was an attempt by Boko Haram to do this, but we neutralized them. Look, information. And the point is this happened all over the world. The state must be able to keep certain information which are sensitive, secret. That doesn't go in the public domain. And in any event, what is going on, I agree with you, and I take my brother's point, that the world is moving fast. You cannot remain still. But we are talking about responsible journalism here. That responsible journalism has a thin line.
Do you consider the article in question as regards the military's operation in Baga as one that we consider as a national security?
If you read the article, I think it crossed the line a little bit. Even if you look at the headline, military plan to retake Baga, there is no way you can report that without telling the public how they're going to retake Baga. You see, let's not even go far. Look at it. Let's try to be very objective here. If at the end of the day you are going to report that I'm going to take over TVC, definitely there's no way you are going to make that report without talking about the strategy which I intend to apply, without talking about how I'm going to raise money and what have you. You see, if you are in a privileged position, you will have access to privileged information. The way you manage that information is very important. Let us forget what the military are telling us. They've told us time without number that Shekarau has been killed over a number of times. Sometimes they will tell you there was an attempt by Boko Haram to do this, but we neutralized them. Look, there's nothing wrong with that because that's propaganda. And you know when there is a war, propaganda is an extension of war as well. So occasionally the military give this information out in order just to confuse the enemy. And what happened in Baga, they said there was a tactical withdrawal. The media position was that, look, they were chased out of Baga. Definitely, they will need to go back into their operational room or what have you in order to decide how we are going to retake this place. Any responsible journalist, once you get that information, you will be very careful because we are fighting a daredevil enemy. And you will still recall, give yourself the benefit of the fan side. During the Iraq war, how did the America manage to take over Iraq? Was the moment they invaded that country, the next thing they did, they went to their operational command center and they were able to get the war manual. And as soon as they pick that, that shows the strategy the Iraqi army are going to use. And the next thing they realize, once they surface here, the Americans just ran them up. So we need to be very careful.
Let me hold it for a bit to bring Mr. Adegoke into this conversation. Earlier, you were talking about the issue of professionalism and the moral burden on daily trust not to have reviewed the strategies of the military. And now, how do we draw the thin line in objective, journalism, telling the right to know and the right to tell? And of course, also ensuring that you're not feeding too much information, to the enemy in this case. Yeah,
I was talking about ethical adherence to ethical standard. And I think talking about ethics, every journalist knows that, yes, you can have the information. You don't have to divulge all. And let us also be mindful of the fact that the responsibility for maintenance of national peace, order, and security is not that of the military alone. It's for all of us. It's just that the military, has been designated as, the first line of, professionals to carry out that responsibility on our behalf. But even those of us on whose behalf the responsibility, that duty is being performed, we also have to be seen to be supporting the military. In this case, I believe, just like he has said, I think, that report crossed the line. It crossed the line of responsible journalism, as far as I'm concerned. That is not to say that what the military, the approach the military now, took to correct that is
two
right.
wrongs do not make a
two
right.
wrongs don't
But let me
make
take
a
you back very quickly to the issue of freedom of information. And of course, he made mention earlier that all of these acts are limited to the extent to which the provision is allowed for in the Constitution. Would you say that the Freedom of Information Act, for instance, is also limited by the Constitution? For instance, even though sections 22 and 39 of the 1999 Constitution, of course, upholds freedom of press, subsection 3 of that section, of course, expressly prohibits and prevents the disclosure of certain information in defense to any law reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. It even goes ahead to limit, military officials to disclose certain information and all of that. Would you say this is a total annulment of the Freedom of Information Act?
No, it is not. It is not. We have to, you see, legality and expediency are not the same. Something may be legal, it may be lawful, but is it expedient to do that thing at that point in time? There is no law. Without an exception, we have a barrister here. There is no such. And there is no right that is absolute, that, we just, give you free rein to do whatever, catches your fancy. No law does that. So it's the burden of responsibility is now, on the practitioner to know when the freedom he has, crosses the line of propriety.
It's all right. Let me ask the lawyer here. Some have considered this exception to be the loophole in our laws. Last year, I told you about the Premium Times journalist who was arrested. And the police was asking him for his source. And now you begin to wonder, is that not taking the exception? Because this is a letter that was written to the acting president at that particular time. Some people are saying that perhaps the military should be asking who leaked this information to Daily Trust in the first place?
But that's the point. And also, you need to appreciate one thing. Journalists are under a duty to protect their source.
That's right.
And because otherwise, information will not get into public domain. And don't forget, some of these corrupt individuals will have something to hide. That's why you have the journalists there. to get information. And somebody, either whatever you call it, in some country there's what you call checkbook journalism, where you pay people so that they give you that information. And you hold them a duty, even at common law, to give them the necessary protection. Because don't forget, these people will have expressed one fear or the other why they are giving you that document. But you see, when you are practicing responsible journalism, some of this information, when you get it, what you will get is that some of them, they will put classify. There will be a stamp on top that will say sensitive, not to be disclosed, or restricted to number of people. You see all these various stamps on those information. So the onus is on you as a responsible journalist who have the interest of your country at heart to diverge, to read it and know which one I'm going to report, which one I'm going to hold back on. Because in case if they react, then I can tell them that, look, I still have further information which I can receive into. But rather than going after the messenger, I think the onus is on the military to now sit down. This is not far-fetched. Look, how did this information get into Daily Trust in the first instance? One, there are other avenues open to you. First of all, you look at who is the reporter behind the story. What is the association of this reporter with some of the military officers who have access to this information? And in most ministries in Nigeria, what I know is that once a file moves from my desk to your desk, there is something at the back of the file which you will read. Now, you now need to narrow it down. How many people have access to that file? What is the relationship of those people with the journalist? That is one. The other option, you can get his phone and get his telephone log and see whether he has been making telephone call to some of the people who have access. So there are other ways. Then what you now need to do is that you identify that person, you deal with him internally, and then you now strengthen the whole structure to make sure some of this information don't get out. There is no doubt. Journalists, being who they are going to befriend people so that they get information. They are going to, even when you go into NIJ and all these journalism school, the first thing they will teach you is the source of information. Where are you going to get your information? Court, church, this, that, and what have you. So these are what they need to look at, rather than going after that editor. And that is where I think they are wrong. But as to the ethics, you see, I have issue with the NUJ, which is the umbrella body. The NUJ is just like a trade union. I have a serious concern, whether they are concerned with professionalism. And I must say this to you. In this country, doctors have a disciplinary body. Dentists have a disciplinary body. Lawyers have a disciplinary body. How come journalists don't even have a disciplinary body? How come journalists don't even have a PIN number? Whereby if they write a story and I have a complaint, I can complain to NUJ. NUJ will constitute a tribunal that will discipline them. And now, what is going on? If you go to any press conference, everybody just stand up and say, I'm a journalist. So NUJ needs to be concerned about continuous training, and also to ensure there's professionalism. But what do you have? Look at what happened during the Dasuki Gate. There were a series of allegations about newspaper proprietor collecting Dasuki money. What happened during Jonathan era, when journalists packed themselves into a minibus, traveling around the state that they are inspecting projects carried out by governors. Now, until the governor of Lagos State, then Fashola said, no, don't come to my state. This is not necessary. Whereby you have your correspondent. And also, there is a major concern whether some of these journalists are even well paid.
That's all right.
Because sometimes they just give them ID card and say, go and hit on the beat.
And
so this is causing
that also
sort of
plays a big role in how susceptible they are to all of these things you're talking about. But thus, this individual case of the Daily Trust in any way affirms the insinuation prior to this time that there seemed to be, a loophole, in the military, divulging information to the terrorists, for instance, because we've recorded cases where strongholds, military strongholds, are attacked by the insurgents.
In fact, for me, this is a very serious issue that this matter has thrown up. If it is possible for any individual to get information on the operational, activities of our military, it's cause for concern. And this is what, the military should do self, examination.
You're asking the military to start looking inwards now.
Of course, it has to look inwards. I read a book several years ago on the Nigerian Civil War. And they were talking about, it was written by the chief information officer of the Biafran government then. And he said that when the third commando, the third Marine Commando, when the leadership changed from Adekunle, the Black Scorpion, to the former president, Obasanjo, they all laughed and said, they just brought an army engineer who does not know so much about warfare and all that. But he said that one thing that they first noticed was that even though Adekunle was a very good, war commander and all that, but they were getting information about the Nigerian, about the federal forces. Information was always leaking to them. And that for like 3 weeks, there was no action from the Nigerian side. And they were thinking that, we said it. But one thing that they saw was that for those 3 weeks, no information was coming from the Nigerian side. They were not getting information anymore. Because what the new commander first did was, to plug all the loopholes through which information was leaking out. And so by the time they were to do the final onslaught, the enemy had no place to hide. Yeah. So information management is an essential part of warfare, which our military has to realize. That this much, that Daily Trust could get this much, should be a source of concern to them, rather than running after the editors and correspondents and the defense correspondents of the military.
It's all right. There's a lot of questions now, but let's begin to also explore the intervention of President Mohammed Buhari, who ordered the vacation of the premises of Trust Media Limited by the soldiers. Would you call that a welcome development?
Yeah, that's a welcome. Well, he's the president of the country, and don't forget.
He is the CNC anyway.
The chief. Why do you call him the commander-in-chief of the armed forces? Because he can call for war and they can stop war. That's what it means in military terms. And also being the head of the executive, let's put it that way, and the armed forces and what have you, then he has a role. And in any event, there's an election coming. You don't want a state whereby people will say under your tenure as the president, this media house was invaded. Let's forget what happened in the past. So I think that's a welcome development by the president. But the question still remains, do we really need to go that far if we do the right thing from the onset? That is the million-dollar question that deserves $1 million answer. And the best answer to that is that the military needs to find a way. How do we work with all the defense correspondents of all these media houses and create a channel of information, a channel of communication? Because you will recall, during the Jonathan era, there used to be regular briefing, I think they call it briefing center or whatever, whereby that man will come in military uniform with one head of one agency. They will give information, this is what they are doing, this is the way to go. So, they need to know how to manage the information. And also, don't forget, you see, the mantra has been that we will not allow any secede any territory to the Boko Haram. That has been the... So how do we achieve that? If the media now reported that Boko Haram has taken over Baga or Mandora or what have you, the military will need to come forward and find a strategy in which they will make sure that doesn't happen.
It's all right.
That's the way to go, really.
We'll take a break here, and when we return, we'll open the phone lines to hear from you as well as explore other dimensions to this conversation. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the program. Mr. Femi Aino and Mr. Ademola Adegoke are still in the house. Thank you very much for staying the course on the program.
Thank you.
All right, so the Nigerian military has accused the Daily Trust newspaper of disclosing details of planned military operations against the Boko Haram terrorists. The disclosure of what they call classified security information amounts to a breach of national security and runs contrary to sections 1 and 2 of the Official Secrets Act. Now, you have also established earlier that this is, to some extent, what was published is in contradiction to the professional ethics, of the profession and all of that. But what happens when what the military reports contradicts what the reporter says on ground? We have seen scenarios of that in the past where media outfits have come to say, no, that is not exactly what is happening in this region of the country. This is not exactly what your official statement read. Would that also be working against the national security or the interest of one nation? Let me get your opinion about that.
Well, the media, like I've said, the duty of maintaining peace, order, and security in the nation is that of every one of us. Yeah. The military just happens to be the first, they are just to be the front, they are just to be, the frontliners in that regard. But that does not, the rest of us still, we still have that responsibility. And when we see that probably if the journalist is convinced that, as far as maintenance of peace, order, and national security is concerned, the military is not doing enough of that, and that whatever and what he knows will help the military and the nation at large to achieve that purpose. I mean, nothing stops the journalist from giving to the public what he has, but on the ground that will only help, you understand, to advance that cause. But if what you are giving is going to be counterproductive, to the actualization of that cause, then you hold back. Because in this instance now, what has been given out, we only, the insurgents, we have access to it, and then they can take advantage of it.
Would you hold back as a publisher, if you have fact that what is truly happening is not what the military is reporting, out of being a generous Nigerian and in the interest of the nation at large, at the risk of also, selling your papers because you have something juicy to talk about?
That's interesting. You see, that's selling my paper is my personal interest. That's my personal interest. The national interest supersedes my personal interest. So we need to get that clear. And the point is this. There is something you can see why wherever, even if you work anywhere you work, this call it cover your ass, in the sense that the military, especially once there is a conventional warfare war going on, like what is going on between Nigeria and Boko Haram, definitely the military will engage in propaganda.
Sorry, let me hold you for a minute to bring this caller in from Ekpe. Good morning, Abimbola. Hello, Abimbola, are you there?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, good morning. Please, I want to make a contribution.
Go ahead, please.
Please, the issue of the journalist, with the national issue, like the national security, I think the journalists should do more. If the journalists could go as far as divulging the information, the secret information, the top secret of the national security, I think they should as well try to go deep, to bite deeper into the sponsors. Who are these people sponsoring Boko Haram, and how their operation has been carried out? If you could recall, there was an Australian that came to Nigeria. He spent so many months in the camp of Boko Haram. It's an international negotiator between the victim's family and the terrorists. He spent so many months there. At least this man must have known so much about these people, the modus operandi of operation. I mean, these are the things which our journalists should do. Even though I'm a young journalist too. I'm a journalist. Hope you understand. the journalists should help in reshaping this country.
That's all right. I think you made your point there, Abimbola. Thank you so much for your contribution. Interestingly, one of the issues raised in the statement, one of the statements I read from the concerned newspaper, is that this is an isolated issue and that perhaps the military hasn't been quite excited about its reportage of the story in recent times, given the resurgence of insurgency in that part of the country.
Yeah, I can't say, well, they will call it isolated incident, but it's an isolated incident that puts all of us at risk. That's why you need to exercise discretion properly. You see, let me just, even where you work, your contract of employment, sometimes they put confidentiality clause because they don't want you to disclose information. I watched your Daily Alake interview with your one of your the breakfast interview. Why they were asking that, okay, TVC has just won this, well, what is the way to go? He said, look, we have a lot of strategy, but I can't disclose all of them because this is a competitive market. You know, so if you are in a privileged position, you will have access to privileged information. The onus is on you to know when not to cross the line, what you should not divulge. And in a competitive market, even just an utterance from you can cause all sorts of problems. And the problem we have in Nigeria is why some of these journalists are misbehaving is just because the libel law in Nigeria is not even working. Because just one report can bring an organization down. So that's why we need to be very careful and make sure we practice responsible journalism.
Super is calling in from Victoria Island. Good morning, Super.
Good morning, Mr. Nifemi.
Please go ahead with the contribution.
And to my dear two gentlemen in the studio, I want to appreciate you.
Thank you.
You know, Mr. Nifemi, I can understand the plight of the military. Having worked so hard, life has been lost. Even they've lived their life in order to, you know, combat this Boko Haram to make sure our country is safe. But there are better ways to handle this situation. They should have allowed the DSS or the police, you know, maybe to invite the leaders of the daily trust people if there's anything that they've done which is not right in terms of national security information, instead of the military going in there to invade the offices. I mean, I can understand how they feel. They work so hard for it, but there are better ways to handle such situations in terms of future. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you so much, Super, for your contribution on the program. You know, earlier we established the fact that journalism seemed to have evolved over the years and it has gone beyond the four walls of even the newspaper or the TV station. It's an election year and the norm now is citizen journalism. So people who might not even, you know, be under the umbrella of the NUJ, for instance, also have their own interest. How do we begin to create a standard or measure and, you know, avoid excesses such that we don't go, you know, put ourselves into more trouble this time?
Even though we have said that, yes, it's the era of citizen journalism and control is almost impossible, almost impossible. But then I know that some countries have also done so much in, you know, in controlling what even comes out, you know, even from the cyberspace.
The last time the National Assembly talked about the social media, I mean, there was a huge uprising as if there was going to be a clampdown. But let's take this call from Ikeja. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning, Nifemi, and good morning to your guests there.
Good morning.
Nifemi, in my view, the Daily Trust newspaper crossed the red line. I know that most of you in the press, you always want to defend your own. It is not proper for privileged information. Let us even take it for granted that the military made a mistake by allowing such information to reach a journalist. But the journalist has a responsibility to also manage the information in the interest of the nation. How on earth do you disclose to the enemy what the armed forces are about to do to defend the citizens of the country? That's the issue at stake. It's not about whether you have the right to publish the truth. There is the truth, but you you have discretion about the usage of the truth. The editor of that newspaper has not demonstrated to me that he has the discretion to know what to publish and what not to publish. The military was provoked. Yes, the action they took was extreme, but they were provoked. These are the same press are the ones that will every day say and be reporting the shortcomings of the military in this war. And then you now come out to publish their strategy. That is not journalism.
It's all right.
Let us, the truth should always be said. The argument of the gentleman on the right does not seem to go down well with me. You can talk about right, but every right has a corresponding duty.
It's all right.
The fact that some information comes to you doesn't mean you must just disclose it, even if it is at the detriment of the society. This is the issue at stake, and the military should watch how information, the way this information has got to the journalists is the same way I think.
George, I believe you made your point very clearly there. Thank you very much. My guests seem to have been quite balanced on the show today. On one hand, they have criticized the military of the approach, and they've also said that daily trust seemed to have crossed the red line. Now, he said the military was provoked, and that kind of roused my curiosity as regards the conduct. What is expected to be the conduct of the military in a democracy?
Yeah, the military, I said it earlier on that the military has to purge itself of its, that mentality of, being more important than the rest of the citizens. It has to purge itself of it. It has to learn to subordinate itself, to civil authority, and to the norms and ethos, in a civil environment. What the military has done, there is no other way to describe it than, taking the law, resorting to the law of the jungle, that might is right, and might can't ever be right. So the military has no excuse for doing what it has done. That is not to say that Daily Trust has done the right thing.
It's all right.
But then there is a way to go about it.
Let's take Olu's call from Ikeja. Good morning, Olu.
Hello?
Good morning. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, I can hear you. I'd like to make a contribution.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, I understand responsible journalism, which the Daily Trust staff may have gone overboard. But there's also the issue of information debt. It's also appropriate that the military authorities, the military system, keep giving us information from time to time. When there is a gap in information, there are likely tendencies of rumors. The public might misinterpret information, and these are the kind of things you bring. Like in the last administration, they had an information center where they keep briefing the public of what they are doing from time to time. That way, people are better informed. I think it's something that these current military authorities can take a cue from. They need to brief us and let us know. This idea that we hear from the grapevine that Boko Haram insurgents took over a place and 2 people are killed, military says it's just one. We hear from the grapevine it's 100. But if there is a mechanism for that, giving us information from time to time, we'll be better informed. And these kind of things will be reduced to a large extent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olu, for your contribution. Do you feel that the military hasn't really engaged the public enough, especially with the recent upsurge in insurgency?
Well, to be fair, I think they've tried, because sometimes they give all this regular information, what happened in this place, how they manage to neutralize these elements here and there. And they do that through the media. I know that some of them, they are more publicity than substance. But having said that, you can't isolate propaganda from what is going on. And, according to my brother, that we are in an era of people journalism. But, people journalism and responsible journalism is a different thing. Even why we are discussing this issue is just because we belong to a particular class. To ordinary people on the street, what they want to read about in the newspaper is bad news. They are not after, if you ask any of them now, how much is the budget for 2019? They will tell you they don't know. But if you ask them what happened to Dino Milaye, a lot of them will say, yes, we are aware of that. You understand me? Because bad news sells newspaper. And even, why is it that television station dedicate almost 80 days reporting what is going on in Dino Milaye house? Because they realize that this is something that can galvanize people's interest. And what sells most newspaper is about, even if you write about sex, people are ready to read than writing about, they don't want good news. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is this: the military needs to go out. They know that the media has a responsibility in what is going on here. And the only way they can do it, there must be joint thinking between the military and the media.
It's all right. Let's take Musa's call very quickly, calling in from Benin Kebbi. Good morning, Musa.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Hi, sir.
Please go ahead with a contribution.
I'm calling from Kebbi State, sir.
Glad to have you around. Please go ahead with a contribution.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Musa. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
Hi, sir. How is it, sir?
Terrific.
Okay, sir. What is there is that... Okay, sir. What is there is that about what you are saying about Boko Haram.
It appears you're listening to yourself on television. I need you to just turn down the volume of your TV and go ahead with your contribution.
About Boko Haram, you are saying. Those people, I don't know how can we take out their issues.
All right. I think that, Musa, you have to call us back so that we can get a more coordinated contribution from you. But where an infraction is alleged and media trust is perceived to have breached, committed a breach of national security or crossed the red line, as you have said, what indeed are the democratic channels and means of dealing with such matters without offending the fundamental human right of the journalists?
Yeah, for me, before the siege, was there any engagement between the authorities of Daily Trust and the military? Was there any engagement? And so the right thing to have done is to first, engage the media trust personnel or the defense correspondent. How did you get this? And by the time you discover, by the time you know how the information got to media trust, you may even find out that you have to do some homework on your own side, and you don't have to. It may not even, the matter will not have gotten to this stage if that has been done. And if media trust now seems to have breached any law, of course we all know the way to go about that. But even at that, because the media is also a partner, in achieving the goal of the military, which is securing, the land, against the insurgents. Because Daily Trust has been a partner, so there can be a warning. You understand? Now, next time, ensure this doesn't happen anymore.
Let's take this call from Abia State. Good morning, Okorafu.
Good morning, Mr. Ifeme. Good morning, our guests in the studio. You see, my brother, today in Nigeria, there's this issue of news or reportage. We lack what we call investigative journalism. The best option for any story, is to get a balanced story. A situation whereby a reporter or an editor sit down in the office, maybe the television, you copy newspaper, they download and listen and say you have made up. That is not the story. Now, let me give you an example. We see what's happening with that. Thank God that Trump and America have settled out of Syria. Syria, IS, and the troops from Russia. When you see a story from that, and you see everything balanced, at the end of the day, you now assess what is happening there. But the situation whereby we sit down, cock up story, and that does not make up what we need in this country is what we call investigative journalism if we want to move forward. 2019 is around the corner. You have seen what's happening. People say fake news. Nothing that's fake news as well as what we say that is propaganda. So if we want to carry news, let it be balanced. Find out from A or B, then you sit down, cook up story moves. You said, but if situation whereby you see that and that does not institution. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day in Lagos.
Well, thank you very much for your contribution. But, you know, I can also sit down there and then hear you say that all we do is propaganda. And some journalists in this country still balance their stories. They still do quite a lot of investigation as well as projecting a world-class journalism. As a matter of fact, the best form of journalism can be found in this part of the world, given, you know, the limited resources they have to play with. But then it's interesting to note at this point the kind of relationship that should exist between the military and the media at such a time like this that Nigeria is fighting insurgency.
Yes, and that's why, you see, the onus is on the editors to know when to publish and when to hold on. Sometimes, you know, I'm privileged to be a publisher of a newspaper, and as soon as the paper comes out, a week after, I start getting letters from lawyers threatening to do this and that. And once I reply them, they just keep quiet. But that comes within the territory. And also, as an editor, sometimes the reporter will come and give you a very sensitive information. Now, the military have just lost some of their personnel, about 30 or whatever is the figure, in Baga. Now, that is a very sad story. There are people who are still, families who are still going the trauma of that incident now. And now they've chased them out of Baga one way or the other, allegedly. They want to retake that place. You as an editor, if you have that information, I can decide that, look, it's not right to publish that.
Let me hold you very briefly to take our last call for the day. Good morning, Yakub.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And good morning to the students in the studio.
Thank you.
For me, let me begin by saying the Nigerian government has done the right thing to direct the military to vacate the place. But having said that, the editor did something that is not right. Because this country, we ordinary citizens of this country, we always complain when the military gets shortcoming, when they kill some of our soldiers. We don't happy with that. Those are the information leaked to the enemy that made them to got that setback. If you have something like that, that kind of information from military, before you release it to the Nigeria or to enemy, quote and unquote, you have to verify, you have to even verify it through the military hierarchy. Can I do this? But in a station where we are saying that he's a journalist, he can write whatever he likes. We are talking about security here. If military is hungry to the extent that they go to their media houses and close it on, it's to show you that they were really angry. Because those are the information they really want to use in order to flush these people out of this country. But I would say that, I can repeat this 1,000 times, we really need foreign assistance in order to defeat these people. Because I said it earlier before, that ICC is already here in Nigeria, particularly in Africa. Because if America and France fail to help us, I don't think we can defeat these people in a time.
I think you made your point.
In order to defeat these people, thank and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Yakub. Gentlemen, we have to go. The take-home for me here appears to be that on one hand, a party could have crossed the red line. On the other hand, two wrongs do not make a right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And have your final comments.
For me, the military, like I've said, has to rid itself of that, superiority complex. The hangover from the military, from the era of military rule, that has to go. And on the part of media managers too, our penchant, for getting scoops and exclusive stories must be tamed, by the larger responsibility of maintaining
Let me
law
have your final
and
comments.
order.
Well, just quickly, I think I align myself with his line of thought, but there's one point. Self-regulation is also important. The NUJ needs to sit up and have a code of conduct for their members on how to report sensitive issues. That's my take.
Femi Aino, international lawyer and publisher of Village News, thank you for joining us this morning. Ademola Adegoke is a communications consultant. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you, Nifemi.
We must state categorically here that we do honor and celebrate the effort, gallant effort of all of our soldiers fighting for the territorial integrity of this country, and there is no way we can play down their efforts because what the military is doing is also, giving the media the opportunity to do exactly what we do right now, safeguarding lives and property of the people. That's our show today. Thanks for being a part of it. We'll be back tomorrow, God willing. I am Nifemi Oguntoye.